Hmm.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again to Jackson Snyder Presents with Vero Heston Yahad. And today, of course, we've got the calendar maven, Mark Heston, who has recently published a book that I want to show you here online at Amazon. Here's the cover. Actually, what I like to do, I'm going to try it again here, try to get on with Amazon. I don't know, I got a little problem. All right. Can you see the book?
Sure. Yeah.
First day of the week. If we open that up, there's a full table of contents here that I just want to point a couple of things out. If I can get it to stay on here. There's quite a bit in this preview that you can actually go take a look at. Now, this book for me, it's interesting because I read some of it, I put it down, I lose it. I find it. I read some of it, I put it down and lose it. This has happened about 5 times. You think somebody's telling me something? Might be senility coming in. But anyway, if you look through the table of contents, you'll find a number of really interesting, what I call fiery gems in here, besides quite a bit of language exegesis. There's some really interesting topics. As you can see, some of them you can get at right here. I like the appendixes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The evaluation of the term new moon, Kodesh, definitely we need to know that. Take a look. Shabbat preparation, times and season. And it goes back into Shabbaton from his second chapter. And a little about King James. That's really cool. And throughout the style it's written in the technical chapters, it's pretty technical, but mostly it is very readable and entertaining as well. So I want to introduce again Mark Heston, and I'm going to just turn it over to him. And I thank you participants who have come. We were going to do a private event here entirely, but some people requested that they come on as well. And there's a couple of them here, and I know several more wanted to come on. We'll probably come on before we're over with. So here we go. Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Well, just trying to pick up from where we had left off before, recognizing there's been a lot of study by some very able scholars associated with the Vero Heston Yahad, and have been affiliated, or I'm sorry, familiar with the Dead Sea Scrolls translations, more commonly the Wise, Abegg, and Cook, which was fairly popular in the 90s. And so actually just this morning I decided to peruse that a little bit further and decided to go into a little bit more in depth on a particular fragment, which I'm sure a lot of the senior scholars here have gone through. This is 4Q 252, fragment 1.
Yeah.
And more specifically in column 2. And I made a few notes on this. And I'm just going to go ahead and read what Wise, Abegg, and Cook have here in their translation on column 2. And it says, in the 605th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, the earth was dry. On Sunday, on the day Noah went out from the ark at the end of an exact year, 364 days, on a Sunday. And then it continues to say, on the seventh, comma, 1 and 6, and then they have in parentheses, a scribal error has confused the text here.
Oh.
An end of parentheses, and then it continues for one sentence and says, Noah went out from the ark to the day after a complete year. What I find interesting, if you correlate this translation with the translation in Genesis 7 and also in Jubilees 5, it almost appears to me as if the quote, on Sunday, and then later in the sentence, or the next sentence, on a Sunday, seems to have been inserted. Now, I went ahead and did a little bit of math. I've done a little bit of this before, but not in comparison to this particular quote. And that is that, Jubilees gives us the exact point in time when sin entered our planet. And that's in Jubilees 3. And it says that that Adam and Eve basically had succumbed to the adversary and sinned on the 17th day of the second month. Now, all of us that have studied the first chapters of Genesis, I think most of us that are into the 364 have come to the conclusion that the year prior to the flood was a 360-day year. We know that Enoch, for those of us that have read Enoch, Enoch in chapter 75, verse 1, he literally tells us that that at the deluge, Yahweh's going to intercalate his 360-day calendar by adding 4, quote, intercalary days, unquote. 4 intercalary days. Excuse me. So we know that Yahweh doesn't change. We know that, so if we, in the prophets and all the prophecies that relate to a 360-day prophecy, right, the 1260, the 42 months, you can add those out. We know we're looking at a 360-day calendar post-dispensation, prior to the flood, and all Yahweh has done in between, which is the time frame that we're living in now, has been intercalating it by 4 days. Okay. So if we take that time where Adam had sinned, and according to Jubilees, says that it was exactly 7 years that he was in the garden. And if you do the work, I think it's in Jubilees, so I don't have the quote for you right now, but you can go back to that chapter in Jubilees 3. And it says that, Adam was placed in the garden after his 40 days of purification, which corroborates with Genesis 2 in the respect that, the angels put him in the garden. And so after 40 days would give you 41. So if you count backwards, then it's pretty evident that that Adam was created on the 7th day. Well, I'm sorry, when I say created, in other words, he was given life on the 7th day. I'm sorry, I'm probably getting into an area that's a whole nother topic. I'm sorry, I just kind of rabbit trailed a little bit there. Well, let me just reemphasize the fact that if it was the 17th day of the second month, it was exactly 7 years. Then it was on the 8th year, right? That would be the 8th year, Anno Mundo, 8th year from creation. And according to Jubilees, it says that Jubilees says that. Here it is. That here it is. Okay. That the flood started in the 27th Jubilee in the 5th week in the 6th year. And you calculate that out, that comes to 1308 Anno Mundi. So if indeed you do the calculation as to when Adam actually sinned, and you can do that with Jubilees very easily, and that was a Thursday, and so you do the calculation. So from 8 Anno Mundi to 1308 Anno Mundi, you have exactly 1,300 years. So from the 17th day of the second month, from the 8th Anno Mundi to the 1,308th Anno Mundi, same day, okay, exactly 1,300 years, you can do the math. So 1,300 times 360, do the division by 7, and it takes you to a Friday. Okay, so in the year 1308 Anno Mundi, the 17th day of the second month was a Friday. That's when the depths of the earth broke open, and the water fountains had burst, and the waters from above came down. And so if we go back to this fragment, this 4Q 252, fragment 1, column 2, and it says that we're looking at on the day that Noah went out of the ark, at the end of an exact year, 364 days, and we're knowing that 364 is equally divisible by 7, we do the math. Well, guess what? It was a Friday that he came out of the ark, not a Sunday. And it fits to what we're calculating here, because what you do is you add the 4 days. I've done the math on this. You add the 4 days to the 17th, takes you to the 21st of the second month. That's a Friday on the account of what I have starting the year on a Thursday. Now, I know that, sorry, that's incredibly confusing. I hope somebody can make sense of what I just said. It's probably easier if I had a PowerPoint for those of you that are visual, just kind of walk you through that. But anyway, try doing the math on that. Take the 1,300 years, multiply that by 360, divide it by 7, see what you get. Calculate that thing from the beginning of Adam's time in the garden to the date of sin, and see what you come up with. Anyway, just a little side note on that. Just trying to think where I can, yeah, you know, tell you what, let me just kind of review a little bit on some of these points. We know that in Exodus 16:1, it tells us that that the children of Israel came into the, was it Elam? Let me see if I can get to that point. Let's see, Exodus 16. Yeah, I'm sorry, Jackson. I didn't know if you had a bunch of questions for me this particular time, and so I was just kind of.
Well, what's the significance of 1308?
Yeah, that's when the flood had actually occurred, and it was exactly 1,300 years from the fall of Adam and Eve.
So we're talking about something like 3000 BC.
In that neighborhood, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because Jubilees tells us it was the 27th Jubilee in the 5th week in the 6th year. And you do the calculation, that's 1308. And the translation of Jubilees that I have, they actually put in the calculations for you. But then I have to double check all these. And they pretty much add up. And so anyway, it's very interesting to come up with the days of the week using that method. And it happens to corroborate with the timepiece that I have starting the year on a Thursday. So just a little side note on that. I actually didn't have that in the book, and maybe I could factor that at some point. So the thing that really should nail this thing down is the fact, there's several points, and we brought some of these up in both parts, but in Exodus 16:1, it says, and it tells us that that Israel came into the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elam and Sinai, and we put a period there. right? And then the very next sentence says, and on the 15th day of the second month, after their departing out of the land of Egypt, the whole congregation. So apparently they were congregating on the 15th day of the second month, right? And then if you do the math again, in the course of that chapter, it tells you that starting the next day, Yahweh's going to give you manna, right? They had gotten quail that evening, and then the next day they got manna, and says, now on the sixth day, you're going to get twice as much. And then Moses says, well, then tomorrow is going to be the Sabbath day. And we have the word Shabbat there in the Hebrew. So consequently, you add that up, that's going to take you to the 22nd of the second month, which is also a Shabbat. Again, all we have to do is count backwards. And here we have the first day of the first month brings you to Thursday, the fifth day of the week. So there's one point.
Are you advocating the changing, or the original Shabbat was not on the weekday Saturday?
Yeah, you had mentioned that before, and I'm certainly open to, like I said, I've done a little bit of study on that, but it wasn't exhaustive. And maybe what I need to do you have a link on that on your site somewhere, Jackson?
For Shabbat? Being on Saturday?
Being on a different...
Yeah, I do, but I would, I don't think I could ever find, I can't find anything there. But, so many are saying they're using some type of Enochian calendar, and they're trying to convince us that, like the Sadducees believed, and some do today, the lunisolars, that the Shabbat shifted either every 3 months or every 6 months or some every month. Can you advocate that or not?
Oh, you're talking about the lunar Sabbath model?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, the problem I have with that is, and I was willing to look at it. I had a good friend of mine who was a reasonable scholar, and he followed that for actually a few years. But I challenged him one time. I says, JR, you got to look at this thing, man. We have a problem. If you have 7 perfect Sabbaths according to Leviticus 23, verse 15, and into verse 16, let me turn to that. It says in the Hebrew, you have 50 days of 7 perfect Sabbaths. Now, from my understanding of the way the lunar Sabbath model works, you can't do that because the lunar cycle is 28 and a half days. And so you're playing with, 29 and a half days. So you're playing with 1 month at 29, another month at 30, and alternating that.
Yes, that doesn't work, does it? Not according to...
Right. It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Now it's only been since the Messianic movement really kind of took off that all of a sudden that little thing came into the picture, to my knowledge, several years ago. But I don't know how long that's been around. Do you have any word on that?
Well, it seems like it kind of crept in, I would say, nearly 10 years ago. At first, I was really aware of it, and we looked at it for a while, but then we had to reject that because I looked it up in the reference material I had, and that was the calendar that was used by Sadducees, usurping priests, that they had borrowed from Greece so that they could be on the same market days. It was a matter of marketing that it's like, we might take over a calendar so that we could shop on Sundays, but that's already happened, for instance. They wanted to match up their calendar with the Greek calendar. This is right after the Maccabees, not long. And so that they could do commerce on the days like Shabbat and on the feast days and so forth. So they matched them up. Same with the Pharisees with their moon calendar. They borrowed that from Persia because Pharisees were foreigners that came in and usurped the temple in 1st century BC. And they came from Parthia, Farsi, Pharisee. Get it? So those moon calendars came in from foreign sources. And it seems like no matter how hard you try, you can't get messianics that believe in Yahshua, who certainly didn't use a moon calendar, to come over to that. It's really so simple, but I guess beliefs are just hard-coded into some of these people, their traditions and so forth, that their traditions overcome truth when it comes their way. What calendar would Yahshua use? That's the big question that was always in my mind. And it would be a solar calendar with either the first of the Kodesh being on Wednesday, or, you know, with some of this new teaching coming to light, and you're not the only one, on Thursday. Just
Okay. Yeah, Jackson?
yeah.
Okay.
Why do you think there's such resistance?
I'm sorry, I guess a resistance in what now?
Why there's such resistance to moving from these lunar calendars to what has been proven, even in Jewish encyclopedias, are incorrect, and certainly not messianic calendars at all. If we're calling Yeshua the King of Kings and the new King David, who's going to come, wouldn't he want to maintain the same calendar he used in fleshly life, or would he want to adapt the messianic Jewish calendars just for the sake of getting along? I'm thinking that he wouldn't change his calendar, because in Ezekiel 44, it makes it very clear that the Zadokite priesthood is going to be dictating the calendar forever.
Ezekiel 34?
44.
Oh, 44.
Yeah. I just threw that out. I wonder if anybody has an opinion on that.
It's all right.
Okay, we're right in the middle of interview with Mark Heston right now, so I can tell you that. Okay, we'll do. Now you know why I'm not a slave to the phone, except right now.
Yeah. I kind of lost your. Oh, you bringing me back?
Well, I'm just saying that. Yeah, you're looking at Green Acres on here.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about a YouTube video here. I don't have your image up here to show, and I just don't want to show my big fat head. So I went to optical illusions and stuff. Yeah, why is there such change resistance when, whether it's fourth day or third day, when the truth is so obvious here on this calendar? Have you had a little bit of persecution about this, or
just about? Well, yeah, yeah. You know, it's kind of funny, Jackson. I had shared this model somewhat informally with some leaders of a messianic group back in Northern California, where I had come from, and they had believed that Shabbat was purely a seventh-day Sabbath, and Shabbaton referred to a feast in the midst of the week. And these people were following the typical lunar calendar that traditionally the Jews have been following and continue to follow. And I said, boy, if you believe that, then you need to go back to Leviticus 23 and refactor a few things. Anyway, so and I don't know if they ever have, but anyway, there was some animosity there. They did allow me an opportunity to do a PowerPoint program on the 3 days and 3 nights thing, and but as soon as I started getting into calendar elements, it's like, okay, yeah, well, we're going to stop this.
Mhm. Do you think
um,
we could get into the 3 days, 3 nights thing again? I know you did that last time, but I think that's something that might be worthwhile to be re-expressed.
uh-huh. Well, I think most of the students that are associated with your ministry there, I've been very impressed with most of them. Ones that I've had some occasion to have some conversation and some email interchange. Um, and I'm sorry, I lost my train. But what's interesting, we know that Yeshua had to do things right on his father's timing, exactly on his father's timing. And we have evidence of the fact that he allowed his disciples to follow the typical Jewish, traditional calendar piece. In I think it's John chapter 7, when he tells his disciples, "Well, you guys go on ahead to that feast. It's not my time yet."
Well,
And
remember who he told that to was his brothers that didn't believe in him.
oh,
But then
I
it
think I
says he comes up later, which makes perfect sense
okay.
when it comes to the calendar. Yeah, well, John is an anti-Semitic gospel anyway. And, it's the feasts of the Jews or the holidays of the Jews and the Jews this and the Jews that, as though they weren't Jews at all in the movement. But here the brothers go up to the feast supposedly. I don't read that as history because the whole purpose behind John is to denigrate the family of Yahshua, I think. And he goes up later. Of course, why?
Right,
He was required to be there.
right.
And that's another thing. These fellows did not go into the temple at all. They would teach from the temple steps, or they would go in Solomon's porch and those kind of things, but not in the temple proper because they thought it was
Okay.
polluted. And we find that in the Gospels, at least as true as we can get here, that these fellows stayed on the outskirts, on the steps or on the porch.
Uh-huh.
If he's going
Okay.
up to the
Yeah,
feast,
okay. Yeah, you're right about that. Neither did his brother. Right, right. I'm just kind of reviewing some of the words in that chapter 7.
and they did not believe in him. Can we take
Yes.
that as truth? When three of his brothers died in the same fashion he did? I don't know. Seems like there's an agenda there.
Wow. Yeah, that's right. That is the brethren. Brethren. Uh, chapter 7. Well, another thing that's kind of interesting to me is that many scholars who are unassociated with messianic and calendar issues, that they believe that Yeshua was an Essene, and those of us that have been reading Dead Sea Scroll material recognize that the Essenes, without a doubt, were utilizing a 364-day calendar. And so if indeed Yeshua was an Essene, then was he using a 364-day calendar? Um,
Well, what else would it be but a Davidic calendar, an old temple calendar? This is also something that, the Gospels were rewritten from a Pauline frame of mind and redacted for specific reasons. And so a lot of this stuff, you have to look behind the text. Like, for instance, you, breaking Sabbath ordinances by rubbing an ear of corn in his hands,
Mm.
Sabbath. He's always getting in trouble for Sabbath breaking, but it's always like there's some other funny little reason here besides the possibility that the Sabbath that he observed was not their Sabbath. And we know that the Sadducees, they didn't always have their Sabbath on the seventh day. They changed every 3 months, depending on the moon. Well, I just throw those out. Tell us more about the book. What about the difference between Hen and Mia? You still there? Did we lose him? Is anybody still there, or am I just here by myself?
I'm here.
Looks like he's still there.
Okay. One of the points that he makes in the book is the difference between two words that mean one. Hen, one. We almost have an English word there that's exactly the same. There's a second word that means one or first, and that's mia. There's also another word that means one sometimes, and that's proto. I've had people tell me in reference to plural marriage that when in, I think it's 2 Timothy or Titus, when it says that a bishop or an elder is only to be married once, the word there is mia, which they consider that to be that they have to have at least one wife and not more than one. I know you discuss Mia and Hen in the book. Can you give us a little bit of insight on that? Is Mark gone?
It said that he left the meeting.
Oh, yeah? He left the meeting. Oh, that's not good. Or maybe it is. I don't know. What do you think? Where did he go?
It looked like he was having computer trouble. He was flicking in and out.
Oh,
Maybe he's trying to get back.
Colin Hamilton. He came back and he cut out again. And then Colin says, "Lao." What does that mean, by the way? Laugh out loud, right? Well, I guess we can do more first century stuff with Calendar until he comes back. Oh, Colin says yes. At the beginning of the internet, right after Al Gore invented it, we used something on bulletin boards back in the late 80s and early 90s. It was, you've heard me say this before, a less than sign and a greater than sign and a capital G.
There you are.
Which meant give it. You back? Having trouble?
Yep. So yeah, I'm sorry. You were talking about the one.
Yes, Hen and Mia. What's the difference between those? You can give us an example or two.
Well, now of course now I've been utilizing Strong's and I'm beginning to recognize that there's some other concordances that might be of some other value in comparison. But now from what I'm seeing, and I'm also utilizing Young's, and they're saying that this is basically a word used in the singular. So it could refer to the. anything to that extent singular. Now, the word heis, my understanding is, and again, using the Strongs, is that it's the cardinal number 1 in Greek.
That would
and-
be hen.
What's that?
Hen. Heis? EIS, Eta, Iota, Sigma, with a accent ague on it. Let me look it up. You still there? Ice means out, doesn't it? Or is it heis? In, ice, in. Like we have isogetics and exegetics. Isogetics is what most people do. They read something into the text that's not there. Whereas exegetics, we get something out of the text without adding our own impressions for it. Take a look at mia in Greek. First one, that's what I thought. Strong, strong, strongs. Is there nothing else but strongs?
Okay, yeah, so, yeah, back on the Mia, Mia being their regular feminine, according again to Strong's. The thing that really struck me is when I did some comparisons with 2 different Strongs. I bring that out at the outset, at the very beginning of the book.
Different?
Comparing Mia with heis in one Strong's that utilizes the King James, and then the strongest Strong's, which is actually utilizing a different manuscript. It's showing that the word Mia is translated first in one manuscript and not the other. And then with the heis, it's just the opposite. So apparently, it looks pretty obvious that there's some little games being played with the what they would like for us to believe the word to mean.
Absolutely, there are.
Yeah, so that was my first realization that we're dealing with covering over a true translation. And another thing, Jackson, while we're on here, I started talking about it at the very beginning. Just found myself going that direction for some reason, and I'd like to touch on this though. Now, if you're okay with the idea,
Please.
this is somewhat disassociated from this concept of the 364 and the actual start date of the week, but in appendix, I think it's appendix C. Let me just is that right? Let me find that real quick. And essentially what it is in this analysis of the calendar and the 3 days and 3 nights, I came across in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 45, when it talks about, Paul is speaking, he says, and he's quoting scripture. He says, it has been written. Now, whenever Paul says that, we just naturally assume he's got to be quoting scripture, at least some old book. Many times we find that whatever he quotes, we can't find it, either in the New Testament or the Old.
It's Greek philosophy that he quotes 13 times.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, what I find funny, though, with this particular verse, 1 Corinthians 15:45, he says, and it is written that the first Adam was made a living soul, and the last Adam was made a quickening spirit. And that kind of got me thinking when I had done the work and realized that Yeshua raised Sabbath morning from the dead. And I thought, well, maybe even the first Adam, did he do the exact same thing? If he's the last Adam, he must have come. Then Adam must have come to life Sabbath morning. That was just a thought. I thought, now how could that be? No, there's no way. Genesis 1 makes it very clear that it was the sixth day of the week that he came to life. So I went back to that and did a little bit of study. And I don't know if you've actually read that Appendix C, but it just blew me away because I saw a discrepancy in making that transition from Genesis 1 to Genesis 2. It was like, wait a minute, we got a problem here. All of a sudden, Yahweh's doing something. The last work that he did was Sabbath morning. It says, on the Sabbath, Yahweh finished his work. Well, what was the work that he finished? Well, now the church that I've been associated with says, well, gee whiz, because he proclaimed the day to be a rest day. But then a couple of verses later into that, this is Genesis 2:7, it says, well, Yahweh, this is the first time they actually used the word Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Yahweh knelt down, he blew into Adam's nostrils the breath of life. And this is a couple of verses after he said, that he finished his work on the seventh day. So I started looking at this over, and I was like, wait a minute. So then I decided, okay, let's bring in some other resources here. So I went back to Jubilees, decided to get a hold of Josephus and see what he had to say about that. And I actually had to get a Greek version of Josephus to really see what it's saying, because it was talking about Sunday. Moses is talking about Adam's creation on a Sunday. I was like, what? So then I got the Greek version of Josephus talking about the creation of Adam, and lo and behold, it talks about Moses saying that Adam came to life. He's talking on the seventh day. Adam came to life on this day, and I was like, wait a minute. And so then I go back to Jubilees and I start doing the calculation and counting backwards, right? Where it says that Adam was was in his purification for 40 days, and after 40 days he was put into the garden, and that was the 17th day of the second month. You count backwards. Obviously, if he went into the garden after 40 days, then that would be day 41. You count back 41 from the 17th of the second month, it takes you to the 7th of the first month. And so it turns out,
I think something that will help you in this is to consider these two creation accounts separate. Different creation accounts, different creations.
Well, this is what I came up with, though.
Okay.
In Genesis 1, let me find that verse where it talks about, let us make man in our image. And let me get that over here. And I see you got some Greek there on the...
Yeah, so I'm looking at Mios here.
Yeah.
3.
So we'll come back to that. So Genesis 1. And so basically at the end of the sixth day, everything that Elohim is actually the word in the Hebrew, everything that Elohim had made was made and is good, and the evening and the morning was the sixth day. But what's interesting is that, and I just encourage you to read Appendix C, because I go into detail on this thing to show how it is that Yeshua, in collaboration with his Father, made all things, including Adam, out of the dust of the ground on the sixth day, but was laying there lifeless, waiting for the dawning into the seventh day, to where the Father, and this is into chapter 2 of Genesis now, had blown into Adam's nostrils the breath of life on the seventh day. Now, all of a sudden, and so consequently now, we need to look at some key verses in the Old Testament to make sure that this is going to that this matches up. Well, guess what? Of all verses, you go to Exodus 20, and it's verse 11, and which is the fourth commandment. And let me turn to that. And it says, I'll show you where the word is different. Exodus 20, 20. Yeah, in verse 11, for in 6 days Yahweh made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that in it is, and Nuach, which is very close to Ruach. You and I know that if we just change one letter, it's basically the same thing with the difference of the meaning of that one letter. And we know what Ruach is. Spirit breath, the head spirit breath. Well, Nuach is the continued life spirit breath. That's what it's supposed to be. And so it wasn't that he rested. And so I go into some forensics to prove the fact that Nuach is not rested as much as it has to do with continuation of new life, i.e. breath.
You mean to say that in this verse 11, rested is an incorrect translation?
Yes, so that word should be breathed. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heaven and earth and the seas and all that in it is, and breathed the seventh day, taking you back to Genesis 2:7, when he put it into Adam, he breathed the seventh day, wherefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. And the other one, this is incredible, you turn to, let's see, it's Exodus 31, verse 13. We all are familiar with that verse, where it says, speak also unto the children of Israel, this is Yahweh speaking to Moses, verily my Sabbath ye shall keep, for it is a breathing sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am Yahweh that sanctifies you. When you look that up in the Hebrew, there is a 3-lettered suffix connected to the word sign that's typically not translated. So I looked that up. Now, I used my Strong's when I did that, and I happened to find those 3-letter combination, and it said breathe. So we have a sign that relates to breathing. And so I had translated that for it's a breathing sign between me and you throughout your generations. Now, all of a sudden, doesn't that make a little more sense? That this is the reason why it was so important for Yahweh to bless and sanctify this day, and why it was so critically important. I mean, if they did work on the Sabbath, what did Yahweh do? He threatened them with death? Well, it had everything to do with giving life on that day. That's why.
That's incredible.
Yes, that's it. And so they covered it up with, the common translation of Josephus, the William Whiston translation, which comes from 1737, which has been touted to be the best English translation of the works of Josephus, and I have a few words to say about that.
It's most common, that's all. Everybody can get to it.
Right. And my belief is that William Whiston relied very heavily on the previous English translations to his time, because in 1602 there was a guy, Thomas Lodge, who translated it. Another guy, Roger Lestrange, translated the same works in 1702. And then about 35 years later, here comes William Whiston, essentially, as far as I'm concerned, editing those works. And that's the translation of Josephus we use commonly today. You can't even find Lestrange or Lodge's translation anywhere. So anyhow, and so consequently, you take that translation that I just went through the Greek, and there it was. And then all of a sudden, the thing, matching Jubilees with Genesis, it was like, there it is. That makes perfect sense. This is why it's so important. Anyway.
I would sure like to, is that in that appendix?
Yeah, Appendix C.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Because now it's like, oh man, see, do you see why they had to cover that up?
That does more for my ideas about Genesis 1 and 2. You want anything else? I'm going to have to take a look at that.
Okay, and so here's another interesting little point. Just to finalize that one thing we're talking about here, and then we can go back to the calendar. In Genesis 2, verse, what is it? Verse 3, and God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. Now, most of the translation says because. In other words, the reason why he sanctified it and blessed it was because that he had rested. And you know, I had accepted that for so many years, and all of a sudden when I was doing this work, it just hit me in the face. It's like, wait a minute. Is that the reason why he blessed it? It was because he rested? That's denying the previous 6 days of all the work that he had done. That makes absolutely no sense at all. Well, it turns out that word because is not because. I went through the painstaking work of taking that Hebrew word with all its little vowel points, etc., and compared it with all, the word is kai. In the English translation, it's K-I-Y. I don't have it right in front of me to tell you what the Hebrew letters were, but you can look that up. And so I compared that with all the other kais with the same vowel points, etc., and it was also translated when or while. In fact, Strong's even says that it has a very diverse, broad means of translation, and sure enough it did. And so consequently, you can retranslate that to say, and God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, while on it he had rested from all his work, which he had created. Anyway, so
That's amazing.
That being said,
I can't wait to find your book again around here someplace.
Yeah. So anyway, we can get back to the calendar. I got into a discussion with somebody just yesterday on that point, and I guess that's why my head kind of went that direction initially. But so anyhow, and so this is why Yeshua rose from the dead at the same point of the week, right? That Adam had come to life. Because he was the last Adam, he had to renew, he had to come back to life at the same hour of the same day, right? Now, you know, if I can take a liberty and just make the point, Jackson, because I know you have the ability to edit all this stuff anyway. So, you know, this 12-hour concept, I had the impression that Carl Archuleta was 12-hour, but he told me in an email that I guess he's not.
I think he goes from morning to morning.
Oh, a 24-hour from morning to morning.
I think, yes.
Okay. And now, am I correct in saying that you're a 12-hour day?
Yes.
Okay. Because when I redid the Hebrew in Genesis chapter 1 on that, I came up with all those 6 days of creation, I came up with and the afternoon past the morning was the first day. And the afternoon past the morning was the blank day, right? All the way up to 6 days. And what's interesting is in verse 5 of Genesis 1, it says, and the afternoon past the morning were the Echad Yom. Now, Echad means one in unity, i.e. two things coming together, i.e. afternoon and morning to make one Yom, because it says in that very same verse that he called the light day, called the light Yom. And so all those creation things are Yoms. Anyway, just a side note. So anyway, I was a little encouraged to hear that you were a 12-hour person.
Oh, yeah.
Because that fits in pretty well with this three. I'm going to ignore that one. That fits in pretty well with this understanding of the 3 days and the 3 nights.
Call from wireless caller.
Anyway.
It might be your mother-in-law.
Well, it's actually my wife, but Let me see. Liddy? Oh, Liddy? Yeah, what's up? Oh, I'm actually on an interview. Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, we'll get to it as soon as I'm done. Okay. Thanks. All right. Bye-bye. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Sorry for the rabbi trails here. Yeah. There's so many points that I'm finding in the Old Testament that are corroborating you know,
I don't hear that scratchiness. I want to see what the LXX says in Genesis 2. Erga otu epoyasen kai katapasen.
and so and so if Adam, and we can do the simple calculation that that Adam's sin was actually occurred on a Thursday or the fifth day of the week, and when E.W. Bollinger tells us that, and being unassociated with any kind of feast concept, to my knowledge, he was back in the late 19th century where he did a lot of his Bible studies. All those appendixes back in the back of his the Bible that was at the got the title of that Bible. Companion, was a companion Bible. Anyway, and he talks about the gematria and says that the number 5 means tabernacles or divine favor. And it just so happens that if we start the calendar the first day of the first month on Thursday, on the fifth day of the week, that most of these convocations on the feasts, the holy convocations where the people would come together, happen to fall on the fifth day of the week, the day of tabernacles and divine favor. The whole reason why you go to the tabernacle is for divine favor. And of course, now E.W. Bollinger had come up with that because he had determined that taking the dimensions of the tabernacle, all the dimensions of that tabernacle were equally divisible by 5. And so there's so many things that are just lining up with this. It's like we got a lot of things to answer for if it starts any other day.
For sure. I wish that we had an accurate Bible translation. They keep coming out with them, and I just received one from somebody called the Sefer. And it's the Bible I've ever seen in my life, with a bunch of extra books. And in there for Kodesh, even though they got Jubilees in that Bible, is New Moon. New Moon.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I got the same Bible. In fact, we've had Steve Pigeon, the guy who's responsible for that book. He's been at our congregation a couple of times.
Really?
And I've challenged him in front of the whole group 2 different times. And what was funny is last year when he came to our group, he had the exact same time frame that I had. Mm-hmm. I got all excited about it. And anyhow, it was kind of humorous. But I gave him a copy of my book actually the last time he came to speak to us. He came to our group about a month and a half ago. So anyway, I just hope he'd analyze that.
What kind of a group are you involved in? A church?
Well, it's a messianic group. It's I can give you the website for it. We have a pretty good leader. His name's Isaac Heckman. It's Called Out Believers. I think it's the calledoutbelievers.org. And so we've got all our meetings, all our Torah readings are recorded and archived on that website. And it's kind of interesting that Isaac was over there in Israel with about 6 or 7 other of our members about a month or so ago back, for the 50th anniversary, the Pentecost thing and the 6-Day War and all that. And I remember hearing a story. He was running up the hillside of Masada. He was very, very fit gentleman. He's always into exercise, a very healthy guy. And he was running up the hillside and got to the top. I guess it was very hot. It was over 100 degrees, and he did it anyway. And the rest of the group were taking the gondola up to the top. Anyway, he runs up there to the
Right in the middle of the story. This looks like the Called Out Believers site right here. I just wonder if they're a messianic group, what calendar they use. Are you still there, Mark?
I think he dropped again.
Okay. Kind of looking for the Sabbath in here, and just out of curiosity. I don't see it. Now we can bomb that place with emails. That should take care of things. Send a drone over there with leaflets. Shows he's still on here. There he goes. Calling Mark. Calling Mark. He might be related in some way to Charlton Heston. Wouldn't that be something? I mean, a coincidence, because Charlton Heston is so connected with the 10 Commandments.
Okay.
Are you related
see.
to
Okay,
Charlton
yeah.
Heston?
Yeah, there it is.
Are you any relation to Charlton?
Actually, my understanding is that he was adopted, and his real name is John Charles Clark. And he got the nickname Charlton when he was adopted by the Heston family. But what's funny is he looked incredibly so similar to my dad. It was kind of funny. I don't know whatever happened to me, but
Yeah. Well, why aren't you putting your image on the Zoom here? Are you ashamed of yourself?
image what of this Called Out Believers?
No, I
Oh,
mean, here on your icon, or what do you call it? Profile picture.
oh,
You're not that ugly.
on the Assembly of Called Out Believers?
No, right here on Zoom.
Oh, well, no, I tried clicking on it before.
Let me ask you what the Assembly of Called Out Believers, what calendar they use.
Oh, they're using the typical lunar approach. And I've talked to Isaac.
Well, I don't know what to tell you, folks. I don't know any jokes. I could probably sing trees. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast. A tree that looks at God all day and lifts its leafy arms to pray. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. Perfect. I think he's gone. We had some good things in this.
I was so wondering.
Is that Marcia? Hit it. Hit it, Marcia.
I'm not sure how to get my picture on there, Jackson.
Oh, that's all right. Marcia was about to sing us a piece. I Fall to Pieces, I think was the one she was singing.
I heard someone snicker there.
Yeah, that was Marcia.
Right.
Marcia.
So anyway, yeah, Isaac has taught our group. He's a very good teacher. He taught, we've gone through a good portion of the book of Jubilees, and he's quoted the book of Enoch several times in his Torah readings. And he's the one that's promoted the Sefer, Steve Pigeon's publication there. Mm-hmm. And almost all the members in our group have a Sefer, including myself. Like I said, Steve Pigeons came and he's addressed our group a couple times. And
Steve Pigeon, if you don't know, is the purveyor of the spokesman maybe for the Sefer publication.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And if you've got any influence around where you live, you can get one free,
Oh, what, e-version?
No. The whole monster.
Oh, really?
I got a letter from a friend of mine that was that he's a member of the Ahad, that he is working for them in promotion, and he's giving them away to people that are ministers and so forth. I said, sure, send me one. And I read the reviews of it when it first came out. I think this is the second edition. Now he sent me one.
All right, wow.
He said if I wanted to sell them, I could get 10%. And I'm going to write him back and I'm going to say, I'll be happy to take 40%. You want me to sell them.
Right.
So I can pass the savings on to other people. Go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
If you feel so impressed, if you could encourage him regarding this Kadesh issue, because I talked to him.
Okay, all right.
But briefly, but I talked to Isaac about this thing, and and so when we went through Jubilees chapter 6 as a group, I took Isaac to task right in front of the whole group, and I said, what do we do with this, Isaac? This 10-day difference that they're talking about. Anybody that follows the moon is going to be off with their months, their weeks, their jubilees. All this stuff, it just says it right there. And then one of the other members, cut me off.
Oh yeah.
I was not getting heavy-handed. I was just kind of putting the information out there. Anyhow, so I said, okay, that's fine. And then later that person apologized to me, but I said, hey, it's okay. Anyway, so I've only had one informal one-on-one issue with Isaac on this calendar thing, and I had another friend of mine who's into the 364, who's been part of our group, and he hasn't been associating lately, but and he challenged Isaac too. So and Isaac was getting a little worried there because he's like, oh my gosh, these guys are making some sense. And then he went back to, I can't remember what the chapter was, somewhere in Enoch, where the whole delineation of how to keep track of the moon, and he was satisfied with that as being a means to account your tekufah. and to do your vernal equinox. And I'm like, how do you do that? And so I told him, a couple of times just here and there when we talk, so you can't do that. There's no way. And he just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of different that he's just not taken that to task, because in every other category, the guy's been very good. He's a good speaker. I think he's a good student. And I think he's tied himself to this lunar, the traditional Jewish calendar. He's taken classes over at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, I think for a better part of a year. And I wonder if he's made a vow while he was over there or something.
Oh.
I know he's made connections with Nehemiah Gordon and some other rabbis. And so I don't know if he's accountable to them or what it is, but I've now, whenever the new moon issue has come up, and of course we know new moon is not found in the Torah, but any correlation to the calendar in the Torah, whenever it comes up, the following day after Sabbath, I'll usually send Isaac an email, or I'll talk to him at the end of services on Sabbath and say, hey, we need to get together. And so it's been about maybe 4 times in the count of a year. He's only been our leader for the past year and a half.
Let's see.
But 4 times that I've, specifically said, hey, let's get together on this calendar. He's never really come out and committed himself to do so. So I'm a little disappointed in him on that, but and so I'm wondering, I had mentioned to him several weeks ago, when we were going to have our second or third discussion on this calendar. I made a comment at Oneg to him when we were standing in line together about, oh, hey, I'm going to be doing this interview on the book. He knew that my book has come out, and I have not been advertising it amongst our group. I'm basically trying to work with him before I go anywhere with this book with our group. There's only a couple of people who know about it, but so anyway, so I told him that hey, I got an interview with this fellow Jackson Snyder with his ministry on Sunday, and he lamented to me. He says, this whole thing with the calendar, and Yahweh, I think Yeshua is going to be the only one left to square this thing out when he comes back. And
That's not true.
And I was like, I don't know. I just didn't want to push it with him at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, so that's kind of what's going on. But there is some good stuff on this website here, Jackson. I think there's some good teachings on here. Anyhow.
Well, I'm going to write him a note, just a friendly note that we were out here at his site, and how we enjoyed looking at his site and talked about him in the radio show. His name's Isaac.
Yeah.
ISAAC. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do that.
And I've offered him. I've offered him a free book of mine, and he has not committed himself to anything. So it's just kind of amazing. But because if he read, and I told him in an email one time, so all you have to do is read Appendix A.
Yeah.
And tell me what you think about Kadesh. But
we'll stick Norman Gray on him.
Okay.
Norman will call him up and say, "Listen, bud, you're going to change your calendar. I'm going to send some Nephilim over there."
Oh no. Okay.
Mark, the time's up. You want to do this again?
Well, yeah.
You're done.
If you want to, I know there was in the beginning there, I was kind of rambling and I wasn't making any sense.
Yeah.
If you want to, we could take a little bit of time. If you want to kind of do a patchwork, I know it's probably a lot of work on your part.
I'll find your book and then I'll go through it some more. I had it with questions and everything, and for the third time, it's disappeared here among the stacks someplace. I looked all over for it.
Uh-huh.
I got home here, but I'll find it. We'll schedule again, and if the folks on here This is to be a private meeting, but some people wanted to come. If you've got questions, and I saw on the chat, a couple did,
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
just email them over to Mark Heston. Can you give them your email address, brother?
Yeah, so the email address is detoxwhisperer at Gmail. That's DETOXWHISPERER, like a dog whisperer, at gmail.com.
So what's a detox whisperer?
Well, at the time I was working at it was Whispering Pines Detoxification Club,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's kind of what I got into. That's the email that I've been messing with since then. But
Detoxification club? It's like a golf course?
yeah, well, that we had to name it that for legal reasons. If we said center or clinic, we could actually get into some issues. But if we have members or guests, then we were okay. So we decided to name it a club.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That'd be a good idea for an assembly.
Yeah.
Very odd social club.
Sure.
There we go.
Very good.
Well, you're going to have to stay on till I finish this email right here. We shared your site with our audience today. And what is the general consensus of the audience concerning this site? Besides some of the JavaScripted menus don't work. Nice? Fair? Poor? Just from what you see. Here comes somebody. Somebody's coming through. Nice. Lol again. Okay. Oh my, says Mike. Nice. All right.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to just tell him that. And the verdict was nice. How about that?
You know, it's interesting. Isaac has not had any real formal training in software computers, and he did his own training and created this website himself. He did a really good job.
Yes, it is nice. I'm going to put my address in there, and if he writes anything back, I'll share it with you all. I just hope that he has nice things to say about you if he does write back.
No, he's always been he's been very good with me. He has me lead the entire congregation in prayer every Sabbath.
Oh, that's good.
Which is kind of neat, but
you do it in the sacred name, or?
Oh yeah.
Say Adonai.
Well, we Isaac actually did a little study on the name, and I was, because I used to pronounce it Yahuwah, and from his study with Ahava being love, his analysis from Paleo and pictographic Hebrew, he came up with Yahava. And so it was very interesting. So we've been using the name. A lot of people in the group have been using Yahava, Yahuwah, Yahava.
Better look that up.
What's that?
Hava in Hebrew. Better look that
Yahava.
up. You'll be surprised to see what it means.
Uh-huh.
Okay, y'all have any other questions? Let's see. Nothing up on chat, so I think we did good. I thank you, Mark.
Okay, well, thank you, Jackson.
That's
so
it.
you want to try it next week then?
Yeah, let's do.
Okay, so 1 o'clock. Okay.
1 o'clock on Sunday. Let me see. I think that would be good. I'll put it up.
Okay. All right, and I'll start off then with Deuteronomy 16:9.
Yes, we would hope you would be better prepared next time, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, brother.
Okay.
And thank you all
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Okay, thanks.
Blessings on all
Take care,
your
everybody.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov. Okay.